Hey there, everybody, and welcome to the Whitwam Organics Weekly Nursery and Garden Report. My name is David Whitwam, and I am your host. This week, we have a very special guest, Miss Anita Camacho, and today we're going to be talking about everything butterflies. One of my favorite reasons for planting gardens, second to food, edible gardens. We like to plant flowers and natives for our pollinators. And so today I brought on a, from where I'm at, an expert. She said there's people way above her. She would probably kill me. I know she can hear me right now calling her an expert, but to me, she's an expert, knows way more about the butterflies and their host plants and the natives than I do. And I'm really proud to have her on today for the show. But before I bring Anita in, we're going to do our nursery and garden report. So I will start with the garden report. What have I been doing? What have I been seeing in the gardens? I bring these garden reports to you guys. Basically, I help manage a lot of community gardens around the Tampa area. The reason why I started even doing this is because I found that over the course of a week or a few weeks, I kept doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I thought that that would be very helpful to new gardeners or people who are new to Florida, if they kind of either saw that I was having the same pest issues or maybe to help them know when to plant what. So one of the things I've done multiple times over the past couple weeks is we are moving our strawberry plants. So if we had them in beds that were in full sun for the fall, winter, and early spring strawberry season here in Florida. And now I'm kind of deciding which plants we want to carry over during the summer. Now, the reason why we're doing this is during the summertime, they need more shade. They're also not going to be very productive. So I want those spots out in the garden for plants that are going to be more productive over the summertime. The other reason is we kind of spaced them out so that they could be in full production. They needed a lot more room. And since it's been getting hot, a lot of the plants have died. So even the space that they're in right now is not really being utilized efficiently. So we're moving the plants over into garden beds that get more shade. The reason we're doing this is when strawberry bare root starts become available, in my opinion, is a little bit later than you could potentially get started on your own. So over the summertime, they're going to put out runners. They're going to put out little daughter plants. And come early fall, late summer, early fall, you can dig those up and plant them in your garden and get an early start on your strawberry season and save money on having to buy bare root plants. Typically, I have bare root strawberry plants available around the end of October to the beginning of November, and these are bare roots, so they take a little while to get going. If you're transplanting daughter plants that are already rooted with soil, they're also going to get started and produce for you a lot sooner. Now, why do the strawberry farmers in Florida not do this? Well, a couple of reasons. It takes up space all summer. There's an entire industry of nurseries that do the strawberry bare root starts, and it's just less expensive labor-wise for them to do that. Also, if you do not cultivate the daughters correctly, you can lose up to 10 to 20% production per generation. You're not going to notice that in your yard or even in your small farm or garden. They notice it over hundreds and hundreds of acres. So those are the reasons why they don't really do it, but you can do it for your garden at home. We are seeing in a few of my gardens, I've seen signs of, it's called a Harlequin bug. It's a little shield-shaped bug. It's of the sucking kind that goes after your greens and collards. Typically, I can grow collards in my gardens all summer long, except for when the Harlequin bug shows up. So the Harlequin bug is kind of to collards plants what the leaf-footed bug is to your tomatoes. So that's usually kind of when I call it quits. A lot of times they don't taste so good, the collards, not the Harlequin bugs. They don't taste so hot over the summertime. They have a lot of other issues. They can get kind of slimy and stinky. If they make it all summer, great. If the Harlequin bug shows up, and I'm not seeing them in all of my gardens. So some of my gardens we're keeping the collards in, and in some of my gardens we are not. So give me just 1 second. So thank you everybody for tuning in. Yeah, hey, Michael Thorne says he has had those little bastards and he put them in soap and water. I mean, they when they start showing up, if I'm having another problem with some of my winter greens that are more heat tolerant, I just call it quits, because it's been my experience when you see one, the rest of them are about to show up. It's kind of like love bugs when you like they're a common. If you're not having any other issues with your collards, I could see trying to fight them or stay them off. But short of using some sort of really heavy pesticides, it's kind of time to call it quits. And like I said, for me, I don't really like the flavor of collards over the summertime anyway, so I kind of move on. And tomatoes. Keep seeing lots of posts about tomatoes. We are about halfway through with what I call the 4 horsemen of the tomato apocalypse. So this last week, maybe 2 weeks, has been a little bit better. So all 4 horsemen of the tomato apocalypse have not blown their horn yet. And what I basically mean by that is when these 4 things happen, I'm calling it quits on tomatoes. I'm not even going to try to fight them. And that is, it's really hot at night or in the morning when you wake up. So typically, once those morning temperatures are over 74, 75, 76 degrees, that's very hard and stressful on the plants. Number 2, a drastic raise in the humidity levels. That really helps spread diseases, fungus, blights. Well, not blights, but the one blight. Number 3, the daily rains. And then number 4 is the stink bugs and the leaf-footed bugs. So you're not getting through battling all 4 of those at once. So right now, because the humidity's dropped out of the air, morning temperatures have gone back down, if you still had tomatoes in, they're probably, getting a new little flush of life. Typically, the cutoff time, kind of what I look at I'm in Tampa. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook and you don't know about us and where we're at, the typical end of tomato season for me is any tomatoes that I get past Father's Day, you're running on borrowed time. So that's kind of the cutoff time for tomatoes, in my opinion. But it's the big thing is those 4 things. So high morning temperatures, daily rains, higher humidity, and the bugs. So when those 4 things show up, just call it quits. Michael Thorne asked about Everglades tomatoes. Everglades tomatoes are a little bit of an anomaly. I mean, you have a little bit more of a chance because it's a smaller tomato. So picture this. Let's just say that you have 20 leaf-footed bugs on your tomato plant, right? And your tomato plant is going to produce 5 pounds of tomatoes. And you have 20 bugs on your plants. And that 5 pounds of tomatoes is made up by big beefsteak tomatoes. Well, each tomato only takes 1 or 2 pricks from these pricks, and that tomato is done. It's not going to ripen very well. And basically, once they pierce it, just like a mosquito, they inject something in it, and that spot kind of rots from the inside out. Now, if that 5 pounds of tomatoes on your plant is coming from hundreds of Everglades tomatoes, the odds are now in your favor of still getting some tomatoes off that plant that are good, even if the stink bugs are there. So Christine asks, is that true for Cherokee beefsteak tomatoes too? It's true for all tomatoes. The stink bugs and the leaf-footed bugs are going to attack any of them. They're all going to ruin the fruit. So any soft-bodied fruit or vegetable like that, they're going to ruin. And I mean, I'll fight them if it's not humid. I'll fight them if the morning temperatures are still low. I'll fight them if the daily rains haven't started yet. But once I've got all 4 of those factors at play, that's when I'm calling it quit on tomatoes. So I know some people who fight it. In my opinion, it's a complete uphill battle. And since I have been putting together this list of heat-loving greens and things, quite frankly, I have a lot of fruits and vegetables that are either extremely tolerant of the summer or enjoy the summer, and I haven't eaten any of this stuff since last maybe September, October, or November. So I have a whole bag full of fruits and vegetables that I'm looking forward to planting, and I've been growing and eating tomatoes in my garden since last October or November. So to me, it's time for crop rotation and it's time to move on. And like I said, those are kind of my big indicators of when it's time to do that. So that kind of brings me into the nursery report. I know I've mentioned these before, but I really just wanted to highlight some of my favorites off of our heat-loving greens and things list. So this is a list of fruits and vegetables that I do either fairly well or extremely well with here in the Tampa area all summer long. Now, just because something's on this list doesn't mean that if you start one of these plants right now, that is going to be the same physical plant that you're eating off of until it cools off in the fall. So just because we say you can grow it all summer doesn't mean that one plant right there is going to be growing all summer. Some of these you really need to plant in succession. Okay, so off the list, let me give you my top picks. Summer Dance cucumbers, Everglades cherry tomatoes, Manoa head lettuce. It's from Hawaii. It's extremely heat tolerant. That's one of the ones I plant a lot of seeds of it. We harvest them as smaller plants, and we just keep planting the seeds all summer long, and we get beautiful, sweet lettuce all summer long. The Ahubak Korean squash, make sure you have room for this one. It will run, is a delicious, buttery zucchini. That is another one that, like, if the caterpillars get really bad and tear the plants up too bad, and it's raining every single day, I might not be able to keep enough BT on the plants to fight the pickle worms, and they might kind of take over. But it being a vining zucchini and rooting along the way, usually a portion of the plant will kind of perk back up again. We can bring it back to life, and then once those flowers actually get pollinated, they are ready to harvest in just a few days. Very, very fast plant and extremely productive. Just to give you an idea of how productive this plant is, in one of my gardens, I had a 4-foot by 16-foot bed filled with regular zucchinis. And let's see, so I plant them every 2 feet. So that was 16 regular zucchini plants. That was my desert zucchini, powdery mildew resistant, which is very productive for a zucchini plant. In another bed, I had 5 Ahubak Korean zucchini plants, and it was outproducing. The one bed was outproducing the other bed 5-1. So for every one desert zucchini I was harvesting 5 of the Korean zucchini. African blue basil, if you don't have it in your garden, get it in your garden. Large leaf green Malabar spinach, a little bit of an acquired taste. I actually have some growing wild over here. I love this. I actually like to eat it raw. The leaves on this one will actually get big enough you can use it as a wrap. Some people complain about the slime, and then I have a lot of other people. There's actually, I don't know that much about it, but that is a chemical in there that's very similar to like what's in cactus and what's in aloe and what's in okra. It's very good for you, very good for your joints. And a lot of people, when they start eating this, their body starts craving it because it is extremely good for you. So it's a little bit easier to acquire the taste when something is extremely healthy because your brain begins acquiring the taste for you. The icebox watermelon, that one does really well over the summertime. The amaranth green leaf Jamaican callaloo is one of my favorite greens to grow all summer. just slightly boiling it and rinsing it off with a little bit of water. I cannot tell the difference between the callaloo and spinach after it's been cooked a little bit. These taste, the Malabar spinach and some of the other spinaches, they taste a little bit different, but the callaloo, it also has a lot of culture behind it. There's a lot of traditional dishes that use the amaranth plant as well as a couple other plants. I have some information on my website about what I'm talking about. The Hakachu cantaloupe, that one does really well over the summer. Any of our hot peppers, pigeon peas, I missed one. Oh, yeah, I missed one. Roselle, Jamaican sorrel, or the Florida cranberry. Get you some of these plants. It is really easy to take care of all summer, and come fall all the way through the holiday season, you're going to get these beautiful calyxes or fruits off of it that you can make some amazing jams, jellies, chutneys, teas, drinks. There's a traditional Jamaican Christmas drink made out of it. Really fun plant. It's actually in the hibiscus family, and it makes beautiful flowers. That is the roselle, true roselle. Calabasa, if you got the room, grow it. The tropical pumpkin, that's kind of related to what everyone talks about a Seminole pumpkin. Pigeon peas, super easy to grow, very productive. The trees will actually, I'm saying trees because they get big, will actually last a few years. Jicama, if you haven't tried jicama, it's really easy to grow, no brainer. It just takes forever. It's like a bean. It needs a pole to climb up. If you plant the seeds now, you're going to get jicama in the fall. It's really easy to grow. The Chinese bride eggplant, and then any of the long beans. We have white-seeded long beans, and we have red noodle long beans, and they are all easy to grow. They need a huge trellis to climb up. One of my favorite things about the long beans is the plants themselves, well, and the beans will attract aphids over the summertime. Not a problem. The plants can handle it. I usually put them on about a 6 to 8 foot trellis, which is not big enough for them. So by the time they get to the trellis, they start falling down and wrapping around like this. And then eventually you've got this kind of thing growing out of your trellis like this with lots of leaves and lots of vines, basically lots of hiding places. So now you got aphids and you got hiding places. And guess who shows up and starts using it as a nursery? Ladybugs. The ladybugs will start using your yard as a nursery. You will not have aphid problems on any of your other plants. If you do this consistently summer after summer, you won't have to buy aphid ladybugs. In fact, you might be giving them away to your friends. So zip right through this. Of course, okra, cowpeas, black-eyed peas. That's another one that's really easy to grow. I'm not mentioning any flowers because that's what we're going to talk about today. And I will end with this one. So sesame. That's right, sesame, like sesame seeds. We have black-seeded sesame. We have white-seeded sesame. We have tan sesame. It's a great pollinator plant. It's really easy to grow. You can just broadcast the seeds. It has beautiful flowers, and it produces for me 100% of the time. I have talked to people who have issues with it. Once the rainy season starts, if your plant happens to be at the point where the pods are trying to dry out on the plant, you might have some issues with the pods kind of rotting on the plant. But it grows fairly quickly. I just plant it again because 9 times out of 10, I don't have that issue with the pods rotting on the plant. And I'd like a cover here for the sun so that it's not doing this to my face, but the wind keeps blowing it off my face. But I guess we'll just deal with it. Well, I said I wasn't going to mention flowers because we're going to talk about flowers today. But I am going to mention this because I don't think we will get to it in our talk because it's not really native. But sunflowers. Sunflowers are a great plant. I actually, in Tampa, you can grow sunflowers year round. And that is another good one to grow all summer long. all of our sunflowers make beautiful cut flowers. We do have one that's the best one for seeds out of our selection. That's the gray stripe. All of the other ones are we kind of grow for looks and for cut flowers and to bring in the pollinators. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's see. I'm going to unmute her first. I had her muted because she was cutting the full back there. Yeah, and I'm going to bring her in. Hi, Anita.
What was I doing back here?
Cutting the full.
Oh, dear.
How are you doing today?
Doing fabulous. Great Wednesday. Beautiful day in Florida.
I know. The weather's just been gorgeous this past week and a half. I was really worried there a few weeks before that when we were already hitting like 78 degrees for morning temperatures. I was like, my God, if it's going to be like this until September, I'm leaving. But it's beautiful weather. So why don't you start by telling everybody a little bit about like what do you do on a day-to-day basis, how you got where you're at? Are you actually at the nursery right now?
I'm at the back office of the nursery right now. Okay. Yep.
So we can kind of start there. So you're at a nursery that you're running, and how did you get there in the back office of this nursery?
Yeah, so we're at Little Red Wagon Native Nursery and in South Tampa. We're how we got here. I started off with a pop-up sale last April, and right in the middle of the shutdown, and some folks were wanting some plants, and I just said, you know what, I'm going to go get a couple truckloads and see what happens. So we had a pop-up sale, literally started the planning at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night, did the pop-up sale on Saturday, and sold out of plants in about 4 hours. So we did curbside pickup, did some pre-orders, and I was absolutely amazed what we were able to accomplish in, with such a short window of opportunity. So Anita, yes.
What plants, like, were you, like, what kind of plants were these? Were
all
these
butterfly attracting, butterfly host plants was the focus. A few nectar plants, but mostly butterfly plants, like obviously milkweed. People love the Monarch. We were working on, attracting Gulf fritillaries, black swallowtails, things that you can attract to your garden. So predominantly we were focused on nectar or host plants with a few nectar plants.
So were these all Florida natives or mostly Florida natives or?
All Florida natives.
Okay. So these were all Florida native host plants. And I guess you had some stuff going on. Like, what were you doing before that? I'm sure you didn't just wake up and say, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this market.
Right. It's been a bit of a build. So part of what we've been working on for quite a while with the city of Tampa, various groups, investor groups and such, was a larger butterfly conservatory project. And part of the big part of the takeaway was the native plant nursery. So people really enjoy butterflies. What do they do to attract the butterflies to their garden? And the biggest component of that is just plant the native plants that wildlife needs. And it's super easy gardening. It's chemical free. And these plants evolved here with the insects. I know you're talking about some pest insects, and quite honestly, some people would consider some of our caterpillars pests because they're eating their plants. So it's one of those things of teaching about sharing the ecosystem. But it was kind of an evolution of a project. And during the shutdown and COVID, it's been a little more challenging with the conservatory project. So the nursery started first. So that's kind of how it evolved. Was I just, Earth Day was that week. I said, let's just sell some plants. People want to be outside. And there's not a native nursery in Hillsborough County until we opened up. So we had a couple more pop-up sales in May and June, and then we found a location on Henderson in August that used to be a different nursery. So it worked out really well to just kind of step into this location, fix it up, and make it our own. And it's been great. We've had so much fun. The customers are fabulous. Everyone loves butterflies. It's just a really easy conversation to have on how to attract them to your garden. So it's been amazing.
So you don't just focus on plants for a butterfly garden, right? You guys have like other Florida natives that I would call like more landscaping plants. So yes. It's not just like people have to think of like, I'm going to build this specific butterfly garden, that they can actually incorporate them in maybe their already existing landscape, rip out grass, have beds that look more like landscaped beds than just wild. I think when you say, you know, Florida natives or a Florida native lawn, I think people think of, I mean, I might be wrong. I think people think of like the abandoned lot down the street, you know, and they, oh, I don't want my yard to look like that. So
Right.
is that how is that how it is, or?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to shout out to Kenny Gill. I was at the 40th anniversary conference for the Native Plant Society as well. Great conference. Agree with you on that. But yes, definitely, we're not necessarily trying to make it the Everglades. We want things to, you know, you could still have a very manicured looking landscape and attract the butterflies and have it look attractive. I know that beauty is real important to a lot of people. And you can have it sometimes in my garden, it's a little bit more, I call it relaxed. And versus, you know, the front is a little more formal, but the side of the house where, you know, folks can still see that side where our driveway is, it's, I'll call it a lot more relaxed for the butterflies, pollinators, and birds. And it's very active on that side of my house compared to the more formal side of my house. And I just like to see the movement. It's one of those things, once you start attracting a couple of species and then you start to notice a lot of other things moving in your yard and the different species of wild bees, it's a lot of fun to bring in, you know, all this activity. So it's kind of one thing that leads itself, one thing leads to another. But yes, we focus on a lot of the butterfly host plants, but a lot of the nectar resources also work for bees. They work for the birds because a lot of the plants will, like beauty berry starts off with a flower and the bees really love those flowers. And then once those berries turn purple, the birds go crazy and they love those berries. And, you know, those are edible for us. A lot of people use them in jellies and different things. So it's a nice edible for, you know, a few opportunities there. So it's really kind of I call it the lower level of the food chain, but a lot of even bigger wildlife can benefit from having these plants as well.
So it's not just about the butterflies per se. It's about creating an entire ecosystem. That's what I'm hearing you say.
I think that's right. I think butterflies is the starting point, and I think it's about getting adjusting to the idea that our ecosystem is intended to be shared with wildlife. So having your plants eaten is actually sharing your ecosystem as it was intended. So, you know, it's kind of, we talk about a lot in the nursery, have a temporary exhibit of a lot of different caterpillars, so people can get to know what the caterpillars look like that turn into butterflies, and even some of the moth species, because they are related, even though they're nighttime flyers predominantly. So people can start to see what it is that's eating the plants and what they turn into. And I think that just changes the perspective a lot of times once they realize what's happening and why, and why is it important. And the fact that we need pollinators, as you know, talking about edibles, it's very important to have our pollinators. And honeybees are, you know, not as good as of a pollinator as our wild bees are. So
at another time, I want to have a conversation with you about when I was, do you remember I was asking you about I think it was the swallowtail, and I said, you know, I always find the caterpillars on my citrus, and I know citrus is all imported. And if we have such a large population of this native, what was their go-to plant before we brought in all this citrus? And you said we have a native.
Yeah, we have wild lime. Wild lime and Hercules.
I had no idea. But what I want to talk to you about is maybe some of the pests that we always deal with in our vegetable gardens, and find out what their typical native host plants are. I don't know. I'm almost thinking that might be another, the pests I'm specifically talking about, having the natives nearby is not going to attract the pests to your yard, because these are such an issue with these, I'm calling them pests because when they're on your vegetables, we call them pests. But it's not going to attract them to your yard. I'm thinking having the natives on site might actually detract them from some of the vegetables that we're growing, kind of as you go eat that over here and let me grow this over here. But anyway, that's a talk for another time. I really want to explore it.
Yeah, companion planting can be very beneficial for things like that. I will, you know, just real quick, as you know, on roses, I grow roses and butterfly gardening. And what I found is I don't use chemicals in my yard, and I haven't used chemicals for a very long time, about 25 years or more. And what I found is the pests actually like the milkweed, for example, is a very big aphid attractor. And so consequently, I don't have aphids on my rose bushes because they like the milkweed better. So sometimes what you're talking about, yes, plant some things that the pests might enjoy better, that might be a native plant that they would go to, versus your vegetables that may not be native. Although jumping over to those vegetables, those are tasty. I mean, we like them too.
Specifically, I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you know the pickle worm?
I don't. That's probably a moth, based on what you're telling me.
It is a moth, and it's a huge issue with our squashes and melons. And we obviously don't have any native squashes and melons that are around. I would be curious to know what their normal host plant is if we weren't all growing squashes and melons.
Well, that would be a good conversation. We could talk about the moth worms next.
Yeah, exactly. I would really like to know. I mean, if they're here, were they imported? Is it a real pest? Is it something that that can be detracted by planting something else? Anyway, that would be a good topic of discussion for another time, and maybe we can even have pictures of the caterpillars so people can differentiate between the moth caterpillars that maybe would be attacking their vegetables versus some of the butterflies and moths that we're going to talk about today.
Right.
That's what I would be really interested. So you are the founder of the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation, as well as the Tampa Bay chapter for the North American Butterfly Association. That was a mouthful.
Yes.
So why don't you tell me a little bit about these associations and foundations and how they're tied together and what your role is and what their role is, and maybe how people can get involved if they want to be more involved.
Well, NABA Tampa Bay, which NABA is the North American Butterfly Association. I was part of that first. It's a national organization here in North America. And I started the Tampa chapter of that group. And what they focus on is conservation, predominantly butterflies. And they work on a lot of butterfly count monitoring and population monitoring throughout the year. And their biggest counts are in July in Florida. Actually, July 4th is the big count globally, I guess, for the whole group. So it's they work at the state and local level with a lot of governmental organizations trying to secure more property for wildlife and helping the butterfly species. So that's what that group is really involved in, and not a related entity at all. But the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation is a foundation I started here, and it's a beneficiary of the proceeds from Little Red Wagon Nursery. And that is very similar in some regards, where we're focused on conservation, education, and research on butterflies, and focusing on the Tampa Bay area and doing conservation work with like the Florida Aquarium, Florida Fish and Wildlife, local groups here, and trying to be more involved on a local level to raise awareness here. So that's the mission of the foundation.
So this is about protecting the wildlands that we already have around Florida, or trying to secure and protect more land.
Well, NABA I would say is trying to secure more land for wildlife. Okay. The foundation, Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation, really we're about increasing habitat on any property, whether it's homes, businesses, habitat that's been disturbed, and trying to put in new habitat to help restore things where land's been completely scraped. But we also have a huge focus on private residences, which is about I think 98% of the United States is privately owned at this point, from what I understand. So there's a lot of opportunities to just create these corridors, even within our own landscapes, to help the pollinators and butterflies especially. And when you're helping butterflies, honestly, you're helping a whole lot of other things. It just works hand in hand.
So it's the Tampa Bay Butterfly Foundation?
Right.
Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
And that they kind of focus on the same things, or is that one more focused on private and homeowners and Is that what I heard you say? And then
Yeah,
the
that's
other one,
really more focused on private, we work with businesses as well. We work with, and we do work on conservation projects here. For example, we worked with the Florida Aquarium and Florida Fish and Wildlife on a 40-acre parcel near Apollo Beach, near the Manatee Viewing Area, Center for Conservation, on populating the habitat there, which basically the property had been scraped, and TECO owned the property. They wanted to rebuild it and put in habitat. The aquarium's got a location there where they are working on the coral reef spawning, and they have coral reef greenhouses as well as the turtle rehab and surgery center. And Florida Fish and Wildlife has an education center there as well as a fishery. I think they're building another building. I'm not sure what that's been designated for, but they're hoping to open to the public in a couple of years. So they really wanted to put in a lot of habitat for the butterflies. That's the land component. And so we put in a butterfly garden, and we planted about 2,000 plants all around the different ponds and the saltwater areas. They've got fresh and saltwater, so the habitat potential was pretty high. Oh, cool. So we've been able to increase the species there. And 1 year we did this planting just before COVID shut down. We did 3 plantings. I think we had 100 volunteers, about 2,000 plants. And we were very lucky. We've only lost a couple of plants out of all those because we were not able to go on property until August. So we went through the entire drought and time period. So that really says a lot about native plants, planting the right thing in the right place. And we saw the species number jump from about 6 species to 20 in just 1 year so far with the monitoring that we're doing on a monthly basis. So it really has made an impact, which is pretty phenomenal. And we just did a park this spring in downtown Tampa, a native plant park in the Encore community. And we had about 7 or 8 species on some of the properties before they were scraped for the tall buildings, residential buildings. And that habitat was destroyed. We were fortunate we put in a lot of the same habitat to keep those butterflies there, not displace them. And we've already seen an uptick in species just since the end of February. I think we're now seeing about 18 species there. So and it's an amazing meadow. It's really turned out to be beautiful.
So some of this is not just private residences, and it's not just trying to acquire land for conservation, but kind of rewilding existing lands. Right. While you were speaking and you were talking about Encore, I was just kind of thinking of all of the businesses in an industrial area where they're maybe using half the property. Like the warehouse type buildings are kind of up front. Maybe they have a couple old trucks parked out back, and then they all got like an acre that nothing's going on in the back of it. And I think, even though you were saying it's privately owned land, I think we have a lot of unused land that land's probably
owned. That land's owned by somebody ultimately, right, sure, at the end of the day. So that's where those opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities where that land's not being utilized, and it could be. So I know Hema has a question regarding, was it only monarchs or any other butterflies that are counted? The groups that I participate in, we look at all butterfly species in our area. So monarchs are one of they're the most well-known butterfly. And certainly there's a lot of attention given to the monarchs because of the migration. And that's a whole discussion we can have, certainly. Just on monarchs, but there's 50 groups focused on that between North and Central America. So there's a lot of attention getting placed on them. And we do participate in research studies on the milkweed butterflies, not just the monarch, in Florida with other universities. So we do participate through the foundation on that. But we count in our area in Hillsborough County, we have over 125 butterfly resident species, and with about up to 200 that migrate through here during the year. So there are a lot of species that we're looking at. Yeah, there's quite a lot. And
then did you see Scott's question there? And then before you jump on that, I just looked down and my laptop has got 18 minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow because you just mentioned the species of butterflies, and I'm going to put it on a roll that I think has about 10 or 15 seconds in between the pictures. I apologize if that's not enough time to talk about each one. Let me go run and grab an extension cord, get my laptop plugged in, and I'll get you going on Scott's question the slideshow, and I will be back in just a second. So we're going to add this. And then I need to bring up this. Boom. All right. Clock's ticking.
All right. So I'll quickly answer Scott's question regarding planting native milkweed. That is a very big discussion. We just passed the Danny sulfur, so we're going to come back to this in a second. These are the black swallowtails. The first one was a female with more blue, and this is the black swallowtail male. They like dill, fennel, anything in the carrot family. This is a common buckeye here. Serranus blue, they like Plumabago. That's the actually non-native Plumabago. We have a wild Plumabago here in Florida that's white. That's the Horace's dusky wing. That's one of the butterflies that uses oaks. And here's the fiery skipper. This one uses grasses as its host plant. And this is the giant swallowtail, our largest swallowtail in the area we talked about earlier, uses wild lime as its host plant, among a few other plants as well. That's the great southern white butterfly. They like pepperweed, which is easy to grow, pops up everywhere. Gulf fritillary, we just saw that. That's a passion vine butterfly. Now we're on to the monarch. And we know they like milkweed. This is an orange barred sulfur. They like the sennas and cassia plants. This is the American lady. She likes cudweed, which is kind of an interesting weed that is a host plant for them. This is a fan crescent. This one likes frog fruit. And here's the beautiful pipevine swallowtail. They like our native pipevine. Tuberosa is the name, as well as this is the polydamas, which also uses that same native host plant. And the queen butterfly, like the monarch, likes milkweeds and milk vines for its host plant. And this is the cutest caterpillar ever, the spice bush swallowtail caterpillar. So I had to include this, and this is the adult spice bush butterfly. They host on spice bush, as you might imagine. And this is our state butterfly, the zebra longwing. They like the passion vines as well. And now we're back to the Danny sulfur. This butterfly likes Spanish needles, which is what it's nectaring on, which that plant is actually one of those that is one of those plants that people love to hate because of its seeds. And it is actually the number 3. We've actually gone through all the butterflies. It went really fast.
I'm so sorry it went through so fast. I realized I could hear you talking. I was like, oh crap, it's going super fast.
It is.
Scroll through it a little bit slower.
Well, we can if you know, we go through a little bit slower, then we can maybe have some questions as we go. If people have questions about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you're able to go back a couple slides. I was talking about the Danny sulfur and Spanish needles, which is known as Biden's alba, that picture.
It's paused now, so just tell me when to switch.
Sounds good. So this plant is an herb. It's actually edible. The flowers are edible. The leaves are used for lots of medicinal purposes. You can Google what those are and see what might be beneficial for you. But this is actually the number 3 nectar plant in Florida for all pollinators growing year round. So this is a really important plant in Florida, even though we don't like the seeds. If you can allow it to just grow somewhere in a pot or in your yard and try and keep it from escaping all over the place if you don't want it to, it's a very, very beneficial plant for so many things. And like I said, the host plant for this little yellow Danny sulfur, which is a real cute butterfly about the size of a nickel. They use this plant for their caterpillars. So you can go ahead to the next one. This is the female black swallowtail. Very beautiful with the blue on the hind wings. And if we go to the next slide, we'll see the male black swallowtail. So a little bit different with a lot more yellow versus a female. And these will use host plants, include things in your garden, which would be dill, fennel. They like things in the carrot family, but their native host plants, I know this is one of the conversations we were starting to have earlier, is actually mock bishop's weed as well as golden alexanders. And those plants are not as readily seen in garden landscapes and you have to go out and find them. Those are 2 plants that we sell here, as well as some of the dill, fennel, and parsley that they also enjoy. But those caterpillars will show up. They initially look like a bird dropping, and they eventually start to resemble and mimic the monarch caterpillar as far as their color scheme. So they benefit from that mimicry to make them appear to be distasteful to birds, which birds, if they eat a monarch caterpillar, are going to get sick. It won't kill them, but they know they'll never eat another monarch caterpillar after they've had one. So that narrows it down for them. But so the swallowtail, apparently I've never eaten a caterpillar, but my understanding is that the caterpillar tastes like what it eats. So I guess it would be tasty if it's eating dill or parsley to a bird. So we can go to the next one, which is our common buckeye, a really beautiful butterfly. This one's a little bigger than a quarter, I believe. And this one likes frog fruit as one of its main host plants, which grows as a great ground cover. Also a great nectar resource year-round in Florida. And a lot of folks lately have actually been replacing their lawns with frog fruit because it grows very low to the ground and it doesn't require the same maintenance that the non-native grasses do. So this is a really cute butterfly. We can go to the next one. And this is the Cassius blue. This is on a blue Plumabago, which is native to Africa, but the native host plant for this one is the wild Plumabago, which is a white blooming flower. And this butterfly is about the size of a dime, very small, easy to think it could be a moth because the females are more grayish brown and the males have a lot more blue to them. So if you see these small little butterflies flying around any of the Plumbagos, this is the butterfly that would be there. They do have another butterfly that looks similar to them, but they're not going to be in the same habitat as this butterfly. So it's a cute one to attract to the garden. So next one. And Horace's dusky wing, I talked quickly about this one. This one is one that will be hosting on oak trees. There are several species that actually use the oak trees as host plants. And I think about 45 species between butterflies and moths that have been documented so far in our area using oak trees. So that's a keystone plant worldwide anyway. And so if you could plant nothing else, an oak tree would be ideal. And we know that it takes about 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to fledge one bird's nest of baby birds. So those caterpillars are extremely important because baby birds can't eat seeds and they can't eat berries. So they need to eat the worms and the caterpillars that the moths and the butterflies are producing. So they're very important. But this is one that would actually come out of the trees and would be nectaring potentially in your garden. And it is very muddled looking with the browns, but it is a butterfly. So this is one that would be very common to see, along with maybe the red-banded hairstreak, which we don't have pictured today, but that's another one that would come down to a garden area. So the next slide is a fiery skipper. This one is probably not quite as big as a dime. These are real cute, little chocolate chip looking flecks on its wings, and they're very fast once their wings are warmed. But this is a very common butterfly to see in your gardens, especially if you've got Biden's alba around, because they love to nectar on that plant. And they use the grasses, our native grasses, like Elliott's love grass, purple love grass, things like those kind of grasses as their host plant, which you'll see if you go looking, is the blades of grass will be curled over, almost look like they've been sewn a little bit shut with some light thread. And the caterpillars are usually hiding in there to protect themselves from predators. So that's how they protect themselves, or try to anyway. That's a really cute little guy.
Yeah.
Next one. This is our biggest beauty in our area, the giant swallowtail. The tiger swallowtail is about the same size, but this is our largest butterfly. This one likes wild lime, we talked about earlier. It will also host on rue, which is not native, and also Hercules club, which is a native. So that's what this butterfly likes. Their caterpillars look like bird droppings, very unattractive looking, which is their mechanism to protect themselves from predators. But they also do go to other citrus, could be orange groves and grapefruit groves. They like lemon trees. They like all kinds of other citrus as well. So this, for the citrus industry, has been a bit of a pest. So but this is a gorgeous butterfly, about the size almost of a dollar bill in wingspan.
Somebody told me that they thought they were trained to say that one of these almost ate their citrus tree to the ground, not just one, but that they had enough of these. And I've had them all over my citrus. I didn't feel like they ate that much.
It depends on the size of the tree, I guess. We have wild limes. If the wild lime in my yard is about 15 feet tall, maybe about 5 feet wide, and I can't tell when they've been there, but when you have a little, maybe 1 or 2 foot tall tree, you'll be able to tell that they've been there because there's just not as many leaves. But if it's a big enough tree, you probably wouldn't notice that much.
Sure.
There was a question about the non-native milkweed disrupting the timing of butterflies' natural migration. So there's a lot of different discussions on the non-native milkweed, the tropical milkweed. So Florida doesn't really experience a tremendous number of butterflies coming through the fall migration. We do get some through here, but keep in mind that when the butterflies, the fifth generation, the super generation of monarchs are migrating, they have not developed their reproductive organs fully. They're in diapause when they're migrating. Helps them be a little bit lighter in flight to get to making it all the way to Mexico, to the Oyamel fir trees. So they're not laying eggs in the fall. So there's always a chance that there could be some stragglers that just can't make the trip, that end up overwintering in Florida or even Cuba. That happens. But they don't develop these organs fully to reproduce until spring, when it's time to migrate north again. And that's when they'll start laying eggs, and then they die shortly thereafter, after they've been overwintering in Mexico for about 8 months. So the tropical milkweed, really, there's been a lot of studies between that. What the monarch evolved here, we do Florida resident monarchs here year round. And what they had co-evolved with is the perennis aquatic milkweed, which is a white blooming milkweed, which can grow in a water area, can grow in a very drought area where there's no water. It really tolerates all that Florida throws at it. It blooms year round. It throws seed pods year round, and it's here all year. So that plant's always been here as a native host plant for the monarchs. So there's a lot of discussion with scientists about what's really happening with the tropical as far as that's concerned, but it's not. Some groups are not believing that that's trapping any of the monarchs here from the migration, because they're not laying eggs at that time. The other issue with tropical is that it just doesn't produce the same beneficial effects from the glycosides and in the milkweed, the milky substance for the monarchs. It's a significantly reduced effect, and it does carry a lot of the spores that are contributing to the OE disease that is spreading very quickly in our Florida residential population of monarchs since that plant was introduced. So the goal is really to plant more native milkweeds, to rehabitat as much as you can with natives, and gradually weed out the non-native milkweeds to help their health. So we can skip to the next one, which is the Great Southern White. I think this one's a really pretty butterfly, about the size of a 50-cent piece, I would say, and it has these beautiful aqua club antennas. This is a male. It's solid white. The female is going to have a lot more gray in her, and they like pepperweed as their host plant. That's going to be their favorite. Now, this is one that might use some cabbage as a host plant, but if you've got pepperweed around, it's a very easy to grow plant that grows naturally, of course.
Anita, what's pepperweed?
Pepperweed is a native plant. It's actually an edible. It's known as poor man's pepper. Supposedly has a peppery flavor in it. I don't really get that. I guess if you crush it enough, you might get some pepper flavor. And it's got some vitamin A and C in it, so it's beneficial for us as well. And it grows super easy from the seeds.
So that's like the weed that you guys see. I think the seeds on it look like sweet pepper seeds or hot pepper seeds.
Exactly.
And it grows yep. I find it has more of a peppery flavor when they're green. So if you actually pick them when they're green and chew them up with your teeth, then they have more of the peppery flavor. When they're dried, they kind of lose the flavor.
So it was a question regarding the posting a picture of the bad milkweed. The color of the flowers of the tropical milkweed is going to be either yellow, or the other option is red with orange combination of flower. Those are the two color schemes of the flowers. They call them many different names at nurseries. I've seen scarlet milkweed. I've seen butterfly weed. I've seen all kinds of different names, but those are the colors. So if you see a milkweed blooming yellow, that's a tropical, and the other one is going to be red and orange combination. The native milkweeds, a lot of them are white bloomers or have a hue of green. The twine vine also blooms white. The world milkweed blooms white. The aquatic milkweed blooms white. Pink swamp milkweed is going to have a pink flower, and the butterfly weed, otherwise the scientific name is Asclepias tuberosa, is going to be a dark orange. So those are the predominant in our area, the predominant milkweeds that you can actually buy commercially that are available. So white, pink, and orange are the ones that you're looking for as far as color on the flowers. So we can go to the next one. And this is a Gulf fritillary. These are very easy to attract to your garden, probably just as easy as a monarch to attract. They like the maypop, the purple passion vine. They also like the corky stem passion vine. Those are two of the natives. And if you plant those in a warm, sunny spot, they are going to be there within minutes, probably, laying eggs. They're very quick to show up to the garden. So that's an easy one to bring in. Next one. And of course, the monarch. We've talked about monarch and milkweeds. I think we've got that one covered, but this is the beloved flagship of butterflies here in the U.S.
Isn't there a monarch lookalike that's smaller?
There's a queen butterfly that's very similar, a soldier butterfly as well, but the soldiers aren't in the Bay Area any longer. They're further south. Gotcha. Those are three milkweed butterflies. In our area, we can attract the queen. The queen butterfly, I think I have a slide of that one in a little bit. Doesn't have as many veins, and it's a little more root beer in color, whereas the monarch is more orange and
Gotcha.
has the veins through the wings. This one happens to be a male. It's got the two dots on its hind wings, and that's the different one of the easiest.
And where? How can you tell it's a male?
Those two little black dots on the hind wings that kind of bulge. The bottom
gotcha.
lower wings, you see about midway through in the lower wings, you see these two black bulges, one on each wing. That's how you identify that this is a male. The females don't have that.
Oh, wow.
So next slide. And this is an orange-barred sulfur. I know a lot of folks have probably seen the cloudless sulfur that flies really, really fast, bright yellow, almost has a green hue. Always looks like it's in a really big hurry. This is another sulfur butterfly, which is a bit larger than that one that always looks like it's in a hurry. This is the orange-barred sulfur, but they use the same host plants, which are the sennas and cassia plants. And really big. This one has a little more of a flutter to it and lingers around gardens a lot longer than the cloudless sulfurs will. You can see actually on this plant, there's a couple eggs on the tops of those leaves, the upper leaves there. Those little tiny yellow dots, that's what those are. And this butterfly is actually right in the middle of laying an egg in this picture. It's kind of neat.
Very cool. That is neat.
So the next one. And this is our American lady. They like cudweed, which is it's a very unattractive plant to most people, but it's a very important plant to this butterfly for laying her eggs and reproducing. So this is another one of those that grows, and I think most people, if they Google cudweed, would see, oh yeah, I pull that out all the time. But it's an important plant for this one, and she's about half the size of a monarch, but they're really, really pretty butterflies. We don't see them coming to gardens as often because those plants have been kind of evicted out of the landscapes. But I have it growing in my garden in different places just so I can hopefully bring her in. So what's next? What's the next? There we go. Phaon crescent. So this is another one that likes the frog fruit. Frog fruit's very popular. That one brings in, like I said earlier, it's a very great ground cover and nectar resource year round. It blooms year round, but it attracts the white peacock, Phaon crescent, and these butterflies and also the buckeye. So these are three different butterflies with one plant that you can attract to your garden with a little bit of ground cover, even if you don't use it in a big way. And a neat thing about that plant is it can be used in hanging baskets, as a draping plant over the sides of pots. If you plant like a taller feature in a pot and use this kind of as a draping plant around the base of the pot, I use it in a whole lot of different ways, and kind of a versatile plant in many ways. And we should have we could next time look at the plants that go with the butterflies, perhaps. That's another idea. This is a cute little butterfly.
Or they can come see you at Little Red Dragon Nursery.
We have the signage on every single plant about what they attract and what's a host plant, what's a nectar plant. So all that stuff is on all the plants, very easy to identify what it is you want to attract. So that's another idea. Yeah, come see us. That would be great. So what's next? Oh, the pipevine. This is a favorite of a lot of people. Really pretty butterfly. This one's a male, has a lot more blue, shiny blue on the hind wing. The females are almost solid black. You don't really see the blue like you do on the males. But they like the native pipevine, which is difficult to get a hold of. We do carry it here. We run out of it quick when we get it in, that's for sure, because this is a very popular butterfly to attract. And the non-native milkweeds, the non-native pipevine is toxic to this butterfly. So a lot of the nurseries will sell the one that gets the big, huge purple flower, the calico type flower on the Pipevine gigantea, and that's toxic to this butterfly. So if it makes a mistake and lays eggs on that plant, it will kill the caterpillars. So this one really needs the native.
I'm assuming this one has more of a wide variety, though, of nectar plants that it likes.
Oh, it likes a lot of nectar plants. Yeah,
okay, because I've seen this in my yard, and I don't have pipevine anywhere. So maybe someone in the neighborhood has it, but I do have a lot of nectar plants around my yard, and I have seen this in my yard.
Well, that would be why. Someone's probably got that vine somewhere nearby.
Sure.
The next one. So this is the other Pipevine Swallowtail. This is the only swallowtail without tails, which is kind of funny, but it makes it into the family based on its DNA. Has a very noticeable red on its abdomen and body, and the red flecks on its hind wings. It actually can tolerate the non-native pipevine. I keep going back to milkweed. It tolerates the non-native pipevine just fine, although that is kind of an invasive plant, but it can use that one. So if you've got the non-native predominantly, you're going to have this butterfly. But this butterfly can use also the native pipevine, just like the Pipevine Swallowtail, which the scientific name for that is Aristolochia tomentosa, if you need to know that. Tomentosa is the name you want to look for if they're giving you a scientific name. And that's really the way you can be certain you're getting the right plant. So what's next? Here's our queen. So like we talked about earlier, this is a milkweed and milkvine butterfly. It is similar to the monarch, uses the same host plants, but you notice that it doesn't have all the black striping going through it like the monarch does. It's a lot more root beer in color than the monarch, being more orange. And these are beautiful butterflies. They're a little bit smaller than the monarch, but not much, just a little bit. But very pretty to see in the garden. And the caterpillars look a bit different, where the queen caterpillar is going to have a third set of antennae, and the monarch caterpillar only has 2 sets of antennae, both at the front and the back end. So that's how you can tell if you've got the queen caterpillars, it'll have a third set of antennae about a third of the way down the front of its body.
But other than that, the caterpillars look very similar?
They do look very similar. I think the queen butterfly caterpillar is a little more striking. It's got a little bit of red near the antenna, and it's just a little more shiny, I guess, than the monarch. But we love the monarchs, of course. So we can go to the next slide, and this is my favorite caterpillar. And I guess all the rest are my second favorite, but this guy is just the cutest thing ever. And this is a spice bush caterpillar. And similarly to when we talked about the fiery skipper, this one rolls itself in the leaves to protect itself, because I guess it's very tasty to birds. It's not toxic to them. Or if it is, it's at a very low level. Birds don't mind eating them. So they wrap themselves in leaves, and predominantly they eat at night to help protect themselves also, which most caterpillars eat during the day that are butterflies. And that's really the biggest difference with butterflies and moths is most moths are nocturnal, and they also eat at night. So when you're talking about all your gardens with your vegetables and things, they come out at night and eat when you're not out there watching. And you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, somebody's been here. And then they go back and turn around and hide during the day, usually. But this one will eat at night also, because it's the safest time for it to eat. And during the day, it will kind of fold over the leaf to protect it and then hide inside. And the next slide shows this stunning, beautiful butterfly. It's a pretty large butterfly, not as big as a giant swallowtail, but it's a pretty large swallowtail, but really gorgeous with that aqua blue on the hind wings. So next slide. And this is I think our last one, the zebra longwing, also likes passion vine. I believe its favorite, based on my experience, is the corky stem passion vine, because the corky stem grows well in the shade or partial shade. And this butterfly, unlike the Gulf fritillary we talked about earlier that likes it hot, this butterfly likes it a little bit cooler and shadier. And this butterfly actually has been known to last anywhere from 6 to 8 months, depending on predators. So this is long wings are much longer lived butterflies. And this is our state butterfly. They just celebrated our 25th anniversary of being our state butterfly in Florida. They are endemic to our area, and but the corky stem is its number one plant. It will use the other passion vine, and just to be clear on passion vines, none of the passion vine butterflies will use the red blooming passion vine as a host plant because it's toxic to them. And if they do, again, make a mistake and lay eggs on it, the butterflies will not survive. So they won't be eating the red passion vine. Even though that's a good nectar source, it's not a good source for the caterpillars. So these are really beautiful butterflies to get in your yard if you've got a shady location. And the nice thing about corky stems is they benefit the birds with the purple berries they get. The flowers are just about a dime in size, really small passion flowers. They're really cute, actually.
What's that on? Is that on our native lantana?
That is button sage lantana.
Okay.
Very good.
Cool.
Love it.
I'm getting there.
Lantana to the Tampa Bay area.
Wow. And was that it? That's it?
That's it. That's all of the butterflies. Those are predominantly the butterflies you can bring into your garden. There's a few others, but those are the most popular.
All right. So, I'm sure people who are watching might want to know a little bit more about, like, okay, so like what can they do tomorrow? What can they do next week? If they have kids, what can they do June 1st?
Yeah, right. Well, they can.
And like, where exactly in Tampa are you located? What kind of services do you guys provide at your nursery? When can they come see all that good stuff?
So we're open 6 days a week. Mondays we're closed. We're open Tuesday through Friday, 11 to 5:30, Saturdays 10 to 5:30, and Sundays noon to 4. We do have an education exhibit. I'm calling it a temporary exhibit because we're hoping to get the butterfly enclosure built, hopefully this year, if all goes well. And but for now, we have an education exhibit. We also have some snakes and lizards on display and other creatures that are pretty fun. And the live butterflies are predominantly available to see Friday afternoons through Sundays. And we release them on Sunday afternoons so they can go do what they need to do.
So you guys actually have places with the chrysalis where people can come in, possibly see the caterpillars, possibly see the chrysalis, possibly see the butterflies right after they came out of the chrysalis.
We have the caterpillars and chrysalis are always there, and just depending on, Tuesday through Thursday just depends on what emerges at that time, whether or not we have additional butterflies on display during the earlier parts of the week. And we have a really cool gift shop also, and we have all the native plants all labeled. So when you take them home, the pot actually will tell you what you bought and what kind of conditions it likes, whether it's sunny conditions, dry conditions, wet conditions, shady conditions, all that's on the label. So you don't have to play the guessing game when you get home and go, what did I just buy? Or remember taking a picture. And a lot of the stuff's already on our website too with Little Red Wagon Native Nursery. So there's a lot of information. And you mentioned June 1st. June 1st starts our summer camps, which we're really excited about. All our nature camps, every week's a different theme. And we're starting off with, of course, with butterflies. And every kid that comes to camp will release a butterfly on Friday. So that's a cool thing we're going to have. But we will focus on nocturnal creatures 1 week, snakes 1 week. We have lizards and other amphibians and other reptiles another week. We're going to be doing a week on native plants specifically. So each week's a little different theme, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
What are the hours of the camp?
Camps are going to run between 8 and 1.
Between 8 and 1. So are you providing lunch?
Well, they're bringing snacks.
Okay, so
pickup is really between 12:30 and 1. 1 is kind of the cutoff.
Okay, and that's Monday through Friday.
Starting June 1st through August 6th.
June 1st through August 6th, every week?
Yep, every week.
Okay. And I'm guessing there's still spots available.
There are still some spots available.
And how much is it?
The 4-day weeks, which we have 2 holidays on the weeks, are $160, and it's $200 for the full 5-day week.
Oh, that's great. That's absolutely amazing. So you still have spots in the summer camps left over. We have talked. We could probably talk for another 2. I know we could talk for another 2 hours, but maybe we'll do that at another time. And we'll go ahead and let these people go. I know I'm hungry and ready for dinner. I'm sure you too. Also have worked all day and ready to call it quits. Thank you, Anita, so much for coming on my show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with myself and with my viewers and with everybody out there, and all that you're doing to conserve this beautiful, wonderful animal, and all the amazing side effects that come with that. I'm really excited to talk with you more about just learning more about possibly what some of these moths are that we have big issues with in our garden vegetables, finding out what possibly they eat in the wild when my vegetable garden is not around. I mean, they gotta be eating something, because I plant the vegetables and they show up. They're not far away, so they gotta be eating something. I'm sure it's native. So we'll figure all that out. And then I want to talk with you some more about the rewilding. I think that would be really neat to go start getting some partnerships with some businesses and seeing if anybody is interested in rewilding their back. Because doing it with houses, you even said it, you've got the business in the front and the party in the back.
Well, it's actually the party's on the side, because it's the only place I have sun. The party's actually going on everywhere a little bit. But it's kind of that little blend. My husband likes that symmetry of a manicured look. So the front is a little bit more, manicured, I guess is what I would call it. But I have vines growing everywhere. I have native plants all over. It's not 100% native yet, but I keep finding another thing that must need to go. So there's another native plant, next is a sparkleberry. I'm going to have to get that just because the name is so cool. So there's a lot of cool plants.
A lot of the areas are types areas that I'm thinking of. I mean, just to be frank, they already look like crap. Like they're already wild. They're just basically got flattened at some point, and then whatever's made it in through the air is what's growing back there.
Yeah.
So they're unkempt, I guess would be a better way to put it. Anyway, so maybe with just some additional intentional plantings, we could get some business owners involved. I don't know, just a thought.
Well, that's something we're doing right behind the nursery. We have a service road back here, that serves the businesses. The garbage trucks go through, to drop off, deliveries and such. And what is considered between sidewalk and road is a hell strip, similarly to the strip on each side of the service road. And we've identified the native plants that we're going to keep and maybe manicure a little bit to clean them up, and then introduce some other species there, because there's really the most common species is litter. So we're back there cleaning up litter every single day, and but we're going to put in a lot more plants that will bring in the butterflies and the pollinators and help. We did see a black racer back there, so that was kind of cool.
That's great.
And we love those. They're very good for keeping some of the things we don't love, control of rats and things. So, so those are the beneficial kind of projects. I know Hyde Park is working on that with their historic. They want to do the same kind of thing with their hill strips. So we're consulting with them on some of those projects. So there's a lot of opportunities, not to mention golf courses. All those rough areas on the golf course is a huge push nationally with that called Monarchs in the Rough, where they're putting in a lot of pollinator gardens. In Florida is honestly the worst as far as numbers of golf courses participating, less than 3% of over 1,300 courses. So there's a ton of opportunity. We're also working with the departments of transportation, which there are 5 in our area.
Yeah,
so
right.
That's a really big project to start saying, beyond the 8-foot safety zone, what else can we put in there that would be beautiful? So you're not having to spray and do all these chemicals and mow all the time. where you just mow twice a year and you don't spray chemicals and you mow at the right time so that the plants reseed and they come back and it's just beautiful. University of Florida has been very successful with that initiative with Florida Department of Transportation from Ocala North. So we're trying to get that to come our direction because it's just pretty to see when you're driving.
So
not to mention all the benefits.
I'm assuming some of this work is being done through the association and the foundation.
Right.
And then, so can people get involved with these organizations? Like,
yes, NABA is membership driven. So you can actually become a member of NABA.org. That's easy. That's NABA.org. And if you're in our zip code range, which is the Tri-County area, Pasco, Hillsborough, and Pinellas, then you would be assigned to the Tampa Bay chapter. And you can also request to be assigned to the Tampa Bay chapter, even if you're outside of our area. We do have some people that are members outside of the area. And then the foundation, we do have an email distribution of volunteers and volunteer opportunities that come up often, as well as with NABA projects. And we have volunteers here at the nursery since it is venture philanthropy, and the ultimate goal is conservation, education, and research. So we have quite a few folks that participate in different ways. And with NABA, it's different. We do butterfly walks, for example, and the butterfly counts. Some people are in it for the gardening. Some people want to do the photography. So there's really all kinds of different facets depending on what the interest level is versus just the gardening that people enjoy. So we do a lot of those kind of walks where we're doing, I'll call them mini butterfly counts during the year, where the big count's July and the rest of the year we're doing kind of smaller counts. So, and thank you, Carrie and Scott, for your appreciation of the nursery. I like that. That's nice. So it's a lot of fun. It's just, it's non-threatening. It's fun gardening. It's easy gardening. These plants love our sandy soil. They don't need much. They don't like fertilizers, really. A little compost goes a long way a couple times a year. So it's pretty easy. That's the nice thing about it. Kids can do it. It's safe for your pets.
So this is educational. It's good for our environment. There are ways to get involved with organizations that are connected with what's going on statewide, on a local level, with departments of transportation. There's a lot going on, but I think people could rewatch these videos, but they might not remember everything that we're talking about. But the bottom line is, go see Anita over at Little Red Wagon Nursery, Native Nursery, and she can talk to you about this if she's available. I'm sure her staff is very knowledgeable of organizations and things that are going on. There is the kids summer camp that's coming right up. So a lot of great things that you can do. But I'd say at the very least,
visit butterflytampa.com. That's a starting point.
Okay, visit butterflytampa.com. One more. We got a question popping up. This one looks like it's fun. I can wait for dinner for this one. So Rick says, I live in a deed restricted subdivision, and plants like Simpson stopper, Walter's viburnum are natives that can be manicured as well as any hedge plant. Yupon holly is another good example. My pollinators from my veggies backyard garden have went way up since planting natives. Well, that wasn't as juicy as I thought where it was going.
No, that's great. Those are great plants, and he's right. That is a challenge for a lot of people, is the deed restriction. But if the villages can get it done, anybody can. They actually now in the villages have competitions for the best native landscape. And it took a long time. That was a pretty big uphill battle, but they've made really great strides on how you can use natives and still have a manicured lawn that looks attractive and doesn't bother everybody so much. Doesn't always have to be Everglades.
The beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much for joining me. I know everybody who watched this and is going to watch this really appreciates your time and information. If you are watching this or recorded and you have any garden questions for me to cover at my next segment or an upcoming segment, you can email those to me at info@whitwamorganics.com. We are a full e-commerce nursery with fertilizers. We have lots of seeds of a lot of these Florida natives that we've been talking about. Occasionally we have the plants, but I'm kind of leaving that up to others at the moment. And we have fruits and vegetable plants and seeds that do very well in our area for Central Florida. So make sure you check out the website at whitwamorganics.com. And thank you again, Anita. It was so great having you on. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.